Hey, welcome back. In our previous video, we defined a lot of the basics for our community, including the visual themes, the public copy, etc. Now we're ready to start defining our teams, creating them, and assigning access roles to our users. So in this video, we'll define each of those teams, user roles, and access roles. We'll also create some teams, and we'll set the access roles for those teams. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so before we start creating teams and assigning roles to these teams, let's define what teams are, what user roles are, and what access roles are. So teams are going to be those meaningful segmentations based on demographics, technographics, and more. So for example, at the community level, we could have teams for community members from the United States or Canada or Japan. We could also have teams for users who are using iOS devices or Android devices. This allows us to, categorize our users and put them into meaningful buckets. Now, user roles are going to determine the level of access granted and the content shown to these teams. So we have all kinds of different user roles from the community up until the project. Some of them, like the administrator role at the community level, give you access to pretty much everything within the platform, whereas community members are going to be a lot more limited in what they can access. So those user roles help us define what these different teams can do. Now, a little bit deeper into that, we also have access roles. Now, access roles are going to determine the user privileges and permissions assigned to each team within a user role. So we can have multiple different teams within a specific user role, and then we can define exactly what kind of access that team has. So let's say we have a bunch of different teams within our support user role at the project level. We can define what each team can do using different access roles. So let's go ahead and take a look at the different user roles, and then we'll move on to creating our teams and defining those access roles. So our highest community user role is going to be administrators. They own the community, and they have access to all community data. So they can do things like create projects, they can see all of the different data that's coming into the community, user profiles, test platforms, etc. Now, right below them are our project creators. And project creators exclusively create projects. They don't have access to community data, but they can go ahead and create projects and create those dedicated testing spaces. Now, the lowest level of user role at the community is going to be your members. And these are potential project applicants and participants. They're going to make up the bulk of your community. And they're all the people who are interested in testing, and they are willing to join your projects. So these are the three different user roles that we have at the community level. And let's go ahead and take a look at what we have at the project level. So for project user roles, we start at the top of the project manager. They own the project, and they have access to all project data. So very similar to what we had with administrators at the community level. Now, next up is support, and they assist the project manager or project managers with feedback triage and tester management. So they're the ones going in, interacting with testers, triaging their feedback, polishing it into that deliverable state to our stakeholders for the maximum amount of impact on the product. Now, we also have observers, and these are internal users who can view a project's data but not make changes. So this is actually a great user role for stakeholders in particular. They can come in, they can view the project data, they can't make changes, but they can keep tabs on how the project is doing and what's going on. Now, participants are basically your testers. They provide feedback, and they collaborate with other users on public feedback. So they're the ones going in, submitting those issues, ideas, and praise, completing activities, rating features, etc. So these are your testers. Now, before someone can become a participant, they first need to apply to the project, and we have a special user role for that called applicants. They've applied to join the project, but they have yet to be confirmed as testers. So, for example, the first time someone goes to join a project, they might go through an onboarding flow where they are filling out a qualification survey, they're answering questions, they'll be stopped, and then they'll stay kind of in this applicant user role. And then we go in and we validate them, make sure that we select the right testers for the project, and then as project managers, we go ahead and we move them into the participant user role. So this is the breakdown of the project user roles right here. Next up, let's go ahead and create some teams, and then we'll assign some access roles. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at teams, and we'll start at the community level. So I'll click on the community menu at the top left, go down to community management, and then over to teams. Now I can click on this to go directly to team management, or I can click on the button on the right to create a new team. Here's all the teams that we have at the community level right now. You can see we've got things for community administrators and support team, observers, etc. So we've got all of our names on the left-hand side. We have the optional description for that team in the middle. We also have the user role, the number of users in that team, and then the target number of users for that team. You can see some teams don't have a target number. So let's go ahead and create a team and see how all this is built out. So just go over to the top right, create a community team. And I want this team to be for community users who have iOS devices. So let's just call it iOS users. I'll leave the description blank. Again, it's optional, and iOS users is pretty self-explanatory. And we're going to select the user role as member. Now, copy access. We can either leave this blank, which means that this team on its own is not going to start out with any access roles, or we can copy from another team. So if this is just an organizational team, really we're just putting iOS users into this team, we could leave the access roles for this team blank and then have our users exist in another team that has all of the required access roles. Or we could copy it over from external candidates. Really, it's up to us, and it really depends on what the needs and requirements of that team is. Since this is just organizational, I'll go ahead and I'll leave this blank. Target users. This is how many users I expect to have in this team. So let's say I'm expecting to have 200 iOS users at the community level. You can also leave this blank. You don't have to fill this in if you don't want to. From here, I can take a look at all of the different users who are in the community level right now. And I can actually move them over into this team right now if I'd like to. So let's say Connor is an iOS user, and so is Eddie and Aaron and Evelyn, right? So just by double clicking on their names, they move into the box down below. I can also remove them from this team if I'd like to. So if I want to remove Aaron, there you go, perfect. And then once I'm done setting up this team, I click submit. And there you go. We have our iOS users team at the bottom there. It's got 3 members and a target of 200. Let's go ahead and take a look at the project side of things now. All right, to access your project teams, you're going to go up to the menu bar, select Management, go over to Users, and then Teams is right there. Here's all the different teams that we have for our Quest 3 Pro project. You can see it looks very similar to the same page that we have at the community level. And let's click into one of these teams, see how it's built out. We'll click on Android this time. So we have that team name right there, optional description, no description this time. That user role is set as participant. We have a target number of 40 users. And then we have this box here for feedback impact factor. So to give you an idea of what that means, when users submit feedback within a project, we have a system called impact score that allows us to prioritize the feedback that's coming in. And that impact score goes up based on a multitude of different factors. And one of those factors can be this feedback impact factor for the team here. So let's say that we had a group of testers that's been with us for a long time. They've been on lots of projects. We trust them. They always give out really, really solid feedback. We could actually set, or we could create a VIP team, and then we could set that impact factor as more important or extremely important. And that's going to weight any feedback that they're submitting a little bit higher than feedback coming from other teams. So that's one way that we can kind of turn the dials on the impact score that's coming from feedback. And we'll talk about impact score and feedback prioritization later on in the course. But other than that one box right there, it really is very similar. You know, we can move our team members over very easily if we want to. So if Alyssa and Brad are Android users, we can easily add them into that team. We'll click submit. And that's our project teams right there. Next up, let's go ahead and take a look at how we can set access roles for the different teams in our community and our projects. All right, let's wrap things up by talking about access roles. And we'll start at the community level. So I'm going to go to my community menu. We'll go to community management, and then I'll go ahead and select roles right below teams. From here, you're going to select which user role you would like to edit, and then you'll select which roles you'd like to give to the different teams. So for example, here at the administrator user role, we only have one team, community administrators. And if I click on these boxes here, like manage content and manage surveys, I can remove those roles from this team. And if I click on it again, that's going to go ahead and give that role back. Now you can notice that some of these roles are grayed out. These are the essential roles required for running your community, accessing the community, creating the project, etc. And we want to make sure that there's at least one team within your community that has those roles. That way you don't accidentally lock yourself out of your Centercode implementation. So this team is going to have those on no matter what. Now, if we were to create another team for administrators, we could edit all of the roles in that team because we already have a pre-existing team that has all of the roles assigned to it and all the essentials there. If we take a look at Project Creator, you can see that the amount of roles reduces. So we can, not as much to edit here. But we do have 4 teams here. So I've got administrators and support team and observers, etc. So let's say I want to give my observers team the ability to access Contact Us, but I want to take away their ability to consume service credits. I can do that just fine. I also have the ability to check all for a team. So if I check all for US project creators, now they have access to every single access role in this user role. And if I check that again, it's just going to remove all roles. I'm happy with my choices here, so I'm going to click Submit to lock those decisions in. And there you go. We've successfully modified those community roles. Let's take a look at the project side of things now. So we're going to hop into Quest 3 Pro. And from here, I'm going to go to Management, Users, and once again, right below Teams is Roles. Similar story here, Project Manager. This is the highest user role available in our projects. And a lot of these roles are grayed in. That way, there's at least one team that has access to all those project essential roles. But if I go to something like Participant, you can see that the amount of roles decreases drastically. And if I go down to Applicant, it's also going to decrease even more. But let's say I go to Participant and I want to give the awaiting NDA team the ability to leave the project for whatever reason. Click on that, click Submit, and there you go. We've successfully modified those roles. So I hope you enjoyed this look at users and teams and all the access roles they can have access to. In our next video, we'll take a look at how we can gather data from our users using profiles and platforms. So I'll see you there.